I'm happy to welcome all participants of this deep dive on Zoom and everyone on LinkedIn Live who are watching us in great numbers. Just a few Zoom basics beforehand to everyone who's live on the call. Please mute your mics, turn on your cameras, feel free to watch directly. Please post questions in the chat or also in the LinkedIn event chat. We'll bring them in to the Q&A session, and of course, feel free also to talk with us directly if you're on Zoom. You just raise your hand or raise your hand digitally on Zoom and join the conversation. Just briefly, to introduce our talk, my name is Ake Rudolph. I'm the director of the UX Design Awards and head of strategy at International Design Center Berlin. We are the awards organizer. A few words about us. The IDZ has been a leading German non-for-profit design institution for more than 50 years. We are a professional association that connects designers, design consultancies, and companies. Our mission is to promote design as a driver of innovation in business and society. The UX Design Awards are our flagship format that promotes the power of good design worldwide. And by the way, the awards call for entries is still open until the end of November. So if you're working on some great experience projects, be it products, services, prototypes, or even visionary concepts, then make it count and check out the awards call on our website. We would be very happy to see also your work in the awards. But we're here to talk about UX, so welcome to our virtual event series. Please do join us twice monthly to meet different award-winning teams. The deep dives present professionals, and talent tracks present up-and-coming designers, and then learn more about their projects and their stories. For more, please jump to our website, subscribe to our newsletter, or follow us on LinkedIn or social media. And now let me introduce today's topic. Smartarchivo is a healthcare enterprise solution for documentation in nuclear medicine and radiochemistry. It sounds like a very specialized field, but we'll hear about this very soon. The solution was still a concept when it won a special mention in the UX Design Awards 2021. And the awards jury handed this distinction for a solution that is coherent and logical, and it aims to digitize documentation, as I said, in healthcare, but also access medical documentation and perform administrative processes. It guides different users and helps them to focus through context-aware interface views, and thus allows different people to complete their tasks in a short time and with minimal cognitive challenges. With this, I would like to introduce the person behind this keen solution, Martin Brecht-Precht. He's a co-founder and CEO of Chroma Experience. Martin studied mechanical engineering. He's a developer and head of design and technology at Chroma Experience, a digital consultancy that he founded in 2005 together with his partner, Paul Lewandowski. He's based in Kiel in northern Germany. So welcome, Martin. Before we deep dive into your project, let me ask you a personal question. It struck me that you studied mechanical engineering and then founded a digital design consultancy. So was there a transition from you, from technology to design, or is there no transition as you see it, but rather is it a connection of both worlds? Can you tell us a few words about yourself?
Yes, I will. Thanks a lot for this nice introduction, and also thanks a lot for inviting me or us to join this appointment. I'm very glad about that. So to answer your question, I started studying this mechanical or pretty technical stuff because I was always interested into how things work. So as a child, I borrowed a lot of tools from my father and started deconstructing, I don't know, my bicycle and things like that, to figure out how is this thing working. So, and that always was a great motivation for me to start studying things like that. And later on, I found out that's not so much about how things work, but more like, why are those working things touching me? So how do I use them? And that's the connection between those two words. And this is something that's that stayed for me. So design is only one part of how a product feels and how a product is used, but it's also functionality and how this functionality is implemented. And so, in my opinion, this is the whole story built from different domains that are responsible for building a great product. And that's not only design, but I agree with you. A good product usually is design driven, but it's also what's under the hood is also very important for how a final product then feels if it is used by a person, a human person. Yeah. That's the short explanation.
The short one that gets longer and longer, and we dived into actually a great description of what design is all about, I think, and what the essence of user experience design is. So let's look under the hood of the solution that was awarded in the UX Design Awards. Please take it away from here and let's dive into Smartarchivo. Please enjoy.
All right. Thank you. I think that was totally wrong, not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something like this. Let me share my screen. I prepared a short keynote for that. So yeah, let's take a look at first. What is this Smartarchivo thing? So it's you explained it in a quite good way, but I think it's important to figure out what's the complexity behind this and what is the problem this product should solve. And also very important because it's something special for this product. Why and how did we start around 1.5 years ago into this new project continuation, something like this. So Smartarchivo, it is a digital solution, as you already mentioned before, for allowing digital processes to have a documentation about medical devices in the field of radioactive devices in the medical field. Yeah, it is as complicated as it sounds, and it took us a very long time to dive deep into the business and to understand how this, basically how the business idea behind this project could be transferred into a digital product. So usually medical devices requires to be measured on a regular basis to make sure they work as expected. So most of those devices are used to analyze images from a, let's say, computer tomograph, or to record radioactivity in a human body, for example. So you have to make sure that the measurements that are done are as precise as possible. And to make sure that this is the case, those devices needs to be measured under laboratory environment regularly, to make sure everything is working as expected. And those measurements needs to be documented. And this documentation is not something that is done for fun or to have a complete box of paper. There are also institutions that check this documentation, whether it's done correctly and whether it is done on time. And until we launched the first version of this product, this was done by using the typical tools in the medical field, which is pen and paper, or in the modern and high-tech field of medicine, it's Excel. So that was our starting point a long time ago. And to figure out how all these things should work, we also needed to deep dive into radiation protection guidelines, some industry standards, legal requirements. We are in Germany, so for sure there is eine deutsche Industrienorm for that, multiple of them, and things like that. So this is, the big picture, and there are a lot of more details, but this is the big picture. And later on, we will also see who is using this tool and what's the purpose for each of those stakeholders. But I think we should deep dive slowly. One question I heard in the past: why did we apply as a concept if there's already a running version? This is short to answer. So the version currently running is a MVP project with a different focus. I will talk about that later. And when we applied for the award, also the UX and UI was still under development. So there was no guarantee that the product would come to life as presented to the UX Design Award jury. So we decided to apply with this project as a concept. The team prepared a video, not only for today, but in general, to have a short, to be honest, marketing-driven information about the project. I will show you, it's around 1 minute, and I will try to give some information while the video is running. As I already said, it's about security of medical devices in the field of mostly radiology, and it's also in the field of radiochemistry. We need measurements with some radioactive, small boxes that that produce radioactivity. This radioactivity is measured, and then it's compared with a range of valid values that are expectable for this device and this small radioactive box. So this is for most of the devices and for most of those measurements, this is the basis. Things can get pretty complex. Some of those procedures requires you to at first mix up some chemical liquids and then put them in the right place and then have a measurement and then some more measurements, and then all the stuff is calculated with more or less complex maths. And in the end, usually there is one exact value you can rate as valid, as unexpected, or as invalid, and then you need, as the owner of the device, you need to take some action. So who are the stakeholders? There are different. So the first stakeholder for sure is the owner of the product, which is our client. It's a small company, also from Northern Germany, providing different services in this field of medicine. They do not only provide the service to enable you to make those measurements, but they also support you with devices in general. They provide consulting services for picking the right device for the purpose you have in your medical organization and things like that. But they also do a lot of those calibration measurements, which has to follow the rules, and they themselves were they feel the pain in how to document this. Why always sending Excel by email? Why getting a piece of paper by fax and then need to transfer this into Excel? There has to be a smarter solution, though. So that was their basic motivation to get into this field of digital products. Then the second stakeholder, for sure, the most important one, is the consumer of the product. So the medical business. They need to be convinced that the solution helps them with their daily problems. So much of those documentation has to be done on a daily basis. So this is something that is part of their usual business. That's part of the daily workflow of not only one, but different people in of the staff of such an organization. So this is critical. Next, for sure, the users that are using the product, which is, in my opinion, something different than the business that is buying the product. So we usually separate between those stakeholders because they have different requirements and different pains and different aspects that are important for those two groups. Those people are responsible for quality assurance, for documentation, for maybe or something like security. So this is a pretty responsible position, making sure all the devices are working correctly. And again, they usually do repetitive tasks with this tool. So this is something we need to keep in mind. And then the fourth stakeholder group are the auditors, the people that are using this product to check your documentation and to, not only to check whether it's done, but also whether it was done correctly and whether everything is fine, or whether there is the need to take action and to dig deeper into what was going wrong. Then let's have a look at the initial situation. So what was the situation when we started into this design project? We started building this digital product some years ago. In 2018, the first version as a MVP was taken alive, and this project had a specific focus. So we was aiming for evaluation of the basic business idea behind this invention of a innovation for the documentation market. There was nothing like this before, so we started from scratch. And for sure, if you start from scratch with a business idea, you usually, if someone is not agreeing, I invite him to call me urgently. Usually there is something like a roadmap to get into production, and there usually is also something like a, let's say, budget. So that means you have a specific amount of time you can invest into evaluation. And what's most important for our stakeholder, our client, is, will this work? So can I make some money out of this? And will this product be accepted on the market? And, or even, is it possible to build such product? That's the questions we started, we had when we started into this MVP project. So from what I said, you can guess what was not the focus is build a nice, fancy, sexy, edgy product that everyone likes, because that was not the idea. We needed a product that would work. So we had different cycles. 2018 until 2021 is a long time for having an MVP in production. We had a growing feature set that was demanded by the market, and we had also some changing business requirements, which is something typical for an MVP phase, which is wanted from our side to build a more valuable product. And we also had the situation that user requirements that were requested, we were not able to fulfill with the solution we already had. So after this MVP phase, there was this follow-up. This follow-up is the project we are talking about today. And that was a pretty comfortable situation because we already had a good knowledge about a lot of things, especially about functional and business requirements. And we agreed together with our client, but also in regards of the change requests or feature requests we already had, that functional and business requirements were already met in general. And another thing that was pretty helpful for us, some more learnings from this MVP phase was that we already knew that the user requirements we had to ignore should be the driver for this follow-up phase, to build a product that's not just functioning like the bicycles I deconstructed, but that also should feel right for the purpose it was meant for. So no, we would not only concentrate on how this bicycle is working, but also how it feels to ride the bicycle. And it should feel good. Or at least it should feel right. We already knew that the product, the greatest weakness of the product is an inconsistent interaction concept, which is not a big surprise. After a long MVP phase where you add features here and features there and functionality there and remove this and change that, this is something that's in the nature of the result. It has to be inconsistent. You cannot plan a product from scratch, prepared for all eventual occurring circumstances and have a reflection on the user interface design or the user interface that is provided by this product. That's, in my opinion, that's just impossible. We already knew that we need to concentrate not on the general way this thing works and the technical perspective, but more on the use case specific perspective. So we wanted to concentrate on the user need and fulfill or extend the product to be able to fulfill this need in the most elegant and the most satisfying way. And this should be done, or we had knowledge, we need a user-centered approach, something that is part of our DNA as a company. And and we wanted to rethink, or we had to rethink the existing technical solutions to be able to also develop a new interaction concept that's not generic and that's not driven by short iteration cycles and things like that, but by user satisfaction. How did this work out, or what was our approach for this design process? And I think we should only concentrate on this design process and not so much on the technical aspects and development stuff and things like that. And this is a chart that I think it's the only one that's not prepared for this keynote. This is a chart we often show to, let's say, new clients or people we get to know, because this is, in my opinion, the biggest deal in this. So many years and many people also, until today think there is a design process and there is software development. And this is are two separated fields, and these fields, besides giving resources from one to the other, are strictly separated. It's different teams, different peoples, different domains, and this is something we fight since years, also with our colleagues, because we think this could only work if the basic idea that is usually born in the design process is, on the one hand, discussed with the technical guys. That is, it could only work if this idea is understood on the whole chain of creating a product, and it is respected. And this is something you can only achieve if you're working as a team of designer, developers, consultants, your client, the stakeholders. So this is a huge team. And this approach is a very general approach that's not driven by some framework or bound to strict methods or something like this. It's the general overall approach you can apply to nearly every digital design project, in my opinion. So what do we want to do and why? We need comprehensive information about, and this general information is not specified because this could mean anything. So information means every information that is in any way related to this product should be clear to everyone or needs to be clarified. Second, we need requirements. So starting with a design project from scratch without any requirements will not create any value. We need requirements. We need to know what do we, for whom do we build this? And what's the purpose? And are there restrictions? Let's say legal restrictions or technical restrictions or business restrictions. All those different requirements needs to be clarified. And they also need to be documented. That's pretty boring. This is what I was doing for the last 2 weeks. This is pretty boring and pretty exhausting on the other hand, but it needs to be done. The third step is as early as possible, starting visualizing solutions. So we can talk to stakeholders about their business, but when it comes to talking about a solution, in my experience, it doesn't make any sense to continue talking. We need to get to, I show you something. And we start with the most critical aspects of a product, starting visualizing it and talking about how this thing could work. Not how it will look like, but how could this work and how could this be presented to the user, to your customer, to whatever stakeholder. And this is not a visualization we use to talk to our clients. This is in most cases, this is a visualization we use to talk to the stakeholders, to evaluate with users, to get quick and early feedback from the people that are the driver for success for this product. And this visualization phase could be pretty complex, could be pretty simple, depends on the complexity of the product and depends on the complexity of the user interface. And always after a successful evaluation, we can then detail this solution more and more. And in the end, we will have some, maybe some user interface or some prototype or whatever to be able to have a full test. And the next step in this process is to then prepare this design concept to be technically developed. And this usually means that we specify so-called design components. Those design components are the building blocks a user interface is derived from. So this is something very important when it comes to development, to have, on the one hand, a nice handover or a nice documentation about how this interface is how it is working, how it looks, what's the system, the visual system behind this interface design. And this is something that is in our company is done by specifying design components and write down things, and especially talk a lot as a team of designers and developers. This 5 dot before user-centered evaluation is misleading, because this is something that's, in my opinion, one of the most important parts of this, besides having experts, domain experts in your team. This is something that is part of every single step I already said before. So user-centered evaluation is a critical part of visualizing solutions. It's a critical part of finding the right requirements. Also, this should be evaluated in a user-centered approach. So this should not be a 5 dot. It should be some kind of exclamation mark. And why are we doing this whole stuff? So I don't know, 20 years ago, we started by just starting Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever tool and drawing some boxes, putting some colors on it, choose a nice typography, and handed this over to the client and then get into discussion. But we changed the working this way, I don't know, minimum 10 years ago, because we learned this approach will not create value for none of us. So not for us having a lot of discussions, not for our clients getting a poor product, not for the users getting the requirement to use a poor product. That is not a satisfying way of creating products. And it's also, and that's maybe more important, it's not a satisfying way of doing some work for nothing. So what we expect from this approach is clarity for everyone. We want to be clear about why are we doing this, for whom are we doing this, how do we want to do this, and what do we want, what is our goal? And we want efficiency. Efficiency is something that's pretty important, especially if you think design processes in some agile software development environment. So efficiency is highly important. We want to fail early, we want to fail fast, but also we want to evaluate fast. From this clarity and efficiency and the knowledge, why are we doing this and how do we want to do this and what are our goals? There is growing confidence. That is something we gather from this approach for us, for our team. We want to be confident in making decisions in every single step of this design process. Also in the development process. If I have a good understanding about what is going on in my project, I can be confident to make decisions. And making decisions is something that's pretty important to create progress in a project. And in the end, all those values together are leading to a high quality product, not only for us, not only in the technical way, but also in the quality for the user and also in the quality for our clients. So this is something I believe in, and this is for us the main approach. And how to work in this approach is something totally different, but this is the rule set for why are we doing this and how a UX design progress or process should be organized. Besides this general, let's say opinion, or my general belief, we had this project, and in this to work in this belief, we had to choose the right tools for getting this done, for achieving those every single goal we have on our list. And that's nothing special for this project. Sooner or later in each project it comes to requirements engineering. As I already said, this is pretty exhausting. You have to talk to a lot of people about different things, and you have to handle a lot of contexts, aspects, and domains, but this needs to be done. Requirements engineering for us usually means we need to understand the business solution. So to clarify what are the requirements. Let's make an example. For this project, we need to figure out how each specific measurement procedure works. So it is our, it's our task to create a solution that allows the user to run this procedure. And if we are serious about our work, some prerequisite is that we ourselves understand how this procedure works, and not only how it works, but why is it created this way. So this is a typical example for some business analysis, besides analyzing, let's say, typical business processes or things like that. Then there are a lot of stakeholder interviews with different groups and with different single persons, figuring out what do you think about this, how do you use this, how do you get your work usually done, and a lot of different stakeholder interviews with all those different players in this field. And then it comes to user interviews. Why do I separate those? Because the user is also a stakeholder. But the user, for me, to test a user interface or to test a UX idea could be treated as a kind of standalone, isolated person. If we create a high-quality user interface, usually this should mean that the person that is interacting with the system or with a machine should not be enforced to bring any business knowledge. So this interface should feel natural. If you know why you are recording those measurements or not, should not matter. So usually we do user tests also with totally with people that has no relation to the product or to the project at all. And then something we also do, and not so much in this project, but we usually do is in this phase to have to figure out all this knowledge we already collected usually leads to, oh, next step could be this, or maybe the next logical feature implementation after achieving this could be this. So this is something that's happening on its own. If you are talking to stakeholders or users, this is usual feedback. I wish I could also order me a cappuccino with this, something like that. So we collect those topics. Sometimes we also get into a discussion whether this is a clever move to integrate this idea into the running project, but usually we would collect them, put them on the backlog, and think about that the next phase. If I am busting the time, please somebody raise the hand. This is not so pretty interesting. This is just an example for how do we collect user requirements, stakeholder requirements. We do card sorting. We try to have a structured and organized way of collecting those things to be able to move those post-its around together as a team, but also together with the client or with stakeholders to get a most information architectural idea about what is going on, what is required. We do a lot of interviews with a predefined set of questions for each interview to make sure we can compare the results and to find the consents of different users, also to be able to have some kind of prio list for those user requirements. There's a difference between those two things. This is pretty rational, cognitive driven, and this one is usually brings more emotional results. So how do I feel while interacting with the system, things like that, not so much how is this working from the business side, but both aspects are pretty important for us. Then it comes to UX design. Now we can have a discussion about, is requirements engineering part of UX design or not? To be honest, I'm not sure. And to be honest, I think it doesn't matter. So for me, requirements engineering must not be part of a user experience design process, but user experience design also in some cases can exist without requirements engineering. I don't know. User experience design for me is the part of this process that leads from defining the problem and defining the requirements and the restrictions and the boundaries to finding a solution. So the definition of a solution is, for me, is user experience design and having this strong user focus. As I said before, this is just methods and artifacts, nothing very special. We used card sorting, service blueprints, information architecture, user flows, wireframes, whatever, low fidelity prototypes, and a lot of stuff more. As I already said before, this is nothing you can apply to every single project. This is part of our toolbox we used in this project and other projects. We use other tools. That's not so important. Important is that you get information, that you be able to transition from a problem to a solution. That's important. How you do this doesn't matter. User flows. This is, as you can see, this is not a 100% pure user flow. It's something between a user flow and a service blueprint. So it's some kind of enriched user flow. Defines not only how the user is guided through this application, but also some side notes about what is going on in the background and what is important in this case, which information needs to be displayed in here, things like that. This is something that's special for this project because we started already with a very good knowledge about the business stuff. In other projects, our user flows are not so rich, but very, very, very simple in the beginning. And then it's a long process to enrich those user flows with all this business knowledge. We had some wireframes, also nothing special. I think something nearly every designer in the digital field has done before. Also in here, there usually are discussions, is this too detailed? Is this not detailed enough? Shouldn't this not be much rougher? Maybe this could look like a user interface, which it is not, and things like that. Also, if the wireframe does the thing it was meant for. So clarify how could this work, which information is displayed, what is important in this view, what is not, how should this be organized, is this matching the information architecture we talked before earlier, things like that, then for sure it is the right way to visualize it that way. From those wireframes, we usually build lo-fi prototypes. We also did this in this project to have the possibility to let users click around on a prototype, to be able to do things like A/B testing, to provide a very good idea about how could this product work later on, and to have detailed discussions with every stakeholder. When it comes to user interface design, which is the logical continuation of having wireframes. So we defined how will this project work or this product work, but what we did not define already is how will it look like. So this is something user interface design can deliver. And also here's no secret. So it's mockups, it's high fidelity prototypes, and then thinking about having a good system behind this user interface. So talking about general layout guidelines, how is this whole thing organized? How is the layout changing if the viewport changes? How is this thing reacting if used on small devices? Things like that. And then in the end, it comes to a design component definition, and this is how this is going. As you can see, those user interfaces or those views we prepared in here are very, very similar to the wireframes I already showed before. This is something that's, to be honest, is good for us. And on the other hand, this is in my opinion, that's a good sign that the wireframes we did before already had a high quality, and so there were not so many changes between wireframes and user interface, besides, let's say, something like aesthetics, playfulness, and all those little big details that are so important in the end. And as you can see in here, I think this is then the better view for this, or the better presentational view for this. And this is something that was the result of this design phase at a point of time in the past when we applied for the award. To be honest, today it's nearly that, but details changed as usual. One word when it comes to the design components. This is something I think that's not so much in the scope of every visual designer or interface designer. This is something that's the result of, also for us, a very long process of working together in design and development teams, is what you as a developer need, ideally, to be able to understand how this systematic design approach is working, and what's the result, what's the deliverable of this design process. What should I hand you over to being able to understand, is this element in this view the same element like in the other view or not? Or is it a variant of the same element? Or is it something completely different with another, with some other business logic behind, or expressing another aspect of this application? So this is something we are, until today, are constantly learning in. We are learning a lot of things, but this especially is something we are learning until today, how to have a smoother workflow, to have a more meaningful result that we can use when it comes to the handover from the design team to the dev team and vice versa. I will not continue to tell you how we started to build this thing, but we are nearly done building this thing. It will be launched this year. But this is the end of this design story I can tell about this project. Then the technical journey starts. We can talk about that in another talk, but we need more than 1 hour. Yeah, so feel free to ask questions. I would try to open the chat, but there is no mouse cursor at the moment. I quit this for now and stop the screen share. And please feel free to ask me anything. If I'm able, I would try to answer your question.
Well, thanks a lot, Martin. It was, I think, such a superb methodological and concise presentation of the process and the elements. So for anybody who's really working in UX, UI design and product building, I think it's super informative. There's actually a couple of questions. There's also like 100 viewers on LinkedIn Live from 25 nations. So there's stuff coming in through the chat. I would start with Lucas. Lucas Hoffman. He wrote, just to get an impression on the scale of the project, how large of a team did you set up for the MVP, and what's the approximate ratio of designers, engineers, and developers?
That's a pretty good question. Thank you, Lucas. That's really a pretty good question, because also on this field, we have maybe our own opinion. From the question, I think I can guess that Lucas is working as a designer. So for us, all those different fields we covered in this design process. So requirements engineering, UX research, having interviews, UX design, business analysis, interface design, all those different fields for us as a team are different domains with different domain experts. So in this design process, there were, let me count, was Kalina, Ilona, Florian, me, I hope forget. So there were four people, at least 4 people involved in this design process for the design team. And we work on those projects as a team. So there is no, you are responsible for this and I am responsible for that. We share responsibilities, we share knowledge, and we share an approach that seems good for all of the people in the team. And then there was the engineering team. It was 3 people that since 1 year are building this product. So I cannot answer Lucas' question exactly, but I would tend to say in this project and in most other projects, the amount of work that needs to be done in the design team and in the engineering team is nearly 50-50. If it comes to
which basically speaks for an agile approach where a designer and an engineer would work hand in hand, so to say.
Yeah, we are already, we're working in projects with really huge dev teams that are handling a lot of stuff, but then it also comes to operations. Then you have a lot of different engineering domain experts involved, then this ratio is different for sure. But in this scope of let's build something fast and let's fail early together, and the development stuff is as important as the design stuff, then I think we are around a 50-50 ratio.
Right.
That's, by the way, that's something we are pretty proud about, because It is, it feels like luxury for me personally that we are able to, or allowed to, or even requested to invest such a great ratio of budget and time into a design process. This is something that makes me very happy.
Absolutely. Nora Tahir, she wrote, if there is already a design system coming out from the MVP, which of course the MVP was a trial, and it was based on a working prototype, advanced working prototype, and now you have the final product coming, and a design system would be something more geared towards iteration into additional systems, right, Nora? You're nodding. Do you want to join in live and
yeah, please join in live. I try to read your question.
Because it's like I'm translating between two people who should be talking directly, I guess.
Yeah, my question was simply, you had components coming in from the MVP already.
Yes.
And then I'm assuming you had to kind of adapt to the new system, and then, so I just wanted to know more about how you adapted.
Yeah, to be honest, we did not adapt, because I can explain this to you. The design system we were using in this MVP project was something that we built for this project, but with the idea of how can we achieve this with a most simple, also technical approach to ramp this up in the shortest time possible. And we are focusing on what are those UI components are meant for, how the user interacts with the business logic. But we totally ignored how is the user feeling if he's doing that. So this emotional aspect of user interaction was ignored by incident. And then we also, for sure, we choose a technology that allowed us to build this up in a very short period of time. And with this first release that is currently built by us, we focused on what is the user requirement in this interaction scenario. And that leads us to, on the one hand, not being able to adapt, because this gap from MVP to what we are currently building is way too big. It would have been senseless to do that, or to even try that. And on the other hand, we also switched technology. So also the technical basis for those UI components is not existing anymore. So those were the two reasons why we did not adapt. So we built all those components. The complete interaction concept was built from scratch.
I would just follow up with Nora, because she's still live in here. You said, how often were you checking in or testing with users after each prototype phase? We're going into methodics now, and there are some other questions coming from LinkedIn. So I would just like to follow up on several of these. So how often were you testing with the users after each prototype phase?
Yeah, usually, or in general, you cannot test too often. You can test too often with the same people, because they are clever and are able to remember things, and this will destroy your test results, because they get used to what you already had built and tell you, I understand this completely, but they are still getting used to your errors. So this is not a good idea. But in general, you cannot test too often. And so what I just said describes the problem. You can only test as often as you are finding people you can do tests with. You should test in this agile approach, which is usually organized in something like, let's say, sprints or cycles. you should test each deliverable after each cycle. This is the basic idea of an agile approach in a project. But as a designer, for me, maybe it's just my personal experience, but it's happening quite often that I have the strong feeling of I'm leaving the terrain in this process where I feel comfortable because I have knowledge, leaving and going to the next state, which is the assumption state. And if I have the feeling of entering the assumption state, I also have the strong feeling I need to do some tests to evaluate my assumptions. And could be something pretty small or pretty big. So that's why I said one of our key goals is to be able to be confident about design decisions. And sometimes it's a pretty small decision about, is this micro interaction working and does it feel right for the user? But it also could be something pretty important like, I don't know, is this information graphic, is it understandable? And if I have the strong feeling of, I don't know exactly, but I think so, then it's a good idea to have a test.
Absolutely. I think assumptions are getting into kind of reading this in the skies or in the stars, and then it should be tested. But you said something that struck me before. I would like to follow up on this. You said you do testing with novices, with people outside of the field, and this is a highly specialized niche field that you're talking about with this solution. So what do you expect from novices when you do tests?
Yeah.
As opposed to pros, I would call them.
So the pro in general has a big advantage. He knows what he's testing, and he can make assumptions about how things are working because he knows the field he is in. And often it is useful to have tests with people that are just testing your user interface and not the business behind the product. So if I think in, let's say, TCR tests, task completion rate tests, task completion ratio test, someone that has a background because he's a pro, for such a person, it's much easier to fulfill a task because he naturally is able to guess what's the next logical step. I know the procedure, so I can guess the next logical step. A novice is not able to do this, or often not able to do this. So if someone that's totally unrelated to the business background of your project is able to complete a task by understanding what is going on this interface and how am I guided through this interface, this is this test definitively brings more value and definitively also brings more information about where is this interface unclear or obfuscated or misleading, things like that.
Absolutely. This is more like we would say in German Lackmus test for the interface, which brings you down to really, is this clear? Is there a clarity level? And I think it's also important when you're talking about training, onboarding of new personnel, then it should be as clear as possible. And
so most of our clients would kill us if we build enterprise software for them and tell them, at first you need to set up some workshops for your staff that should work with this interface because it's unclear, obfuscated, misleading. But I can sell some workshops, so let's have some workshops. This is not acceptable.
Absolutely. There is a question that I think also connects nicely to this from Mukesh Bakshi. He's at UX Design Services at Samsung, and he asked if you could explain about the personas for this project. Connects to the users, connects to the use cases, the different levels that you want to test. Anything on that?
Yeah, so we use personas in general, but we decided to not use personas in this project. Because, as I stated before, we have a pretty complex situation on the stakeholder side. There are totally different groups of users. There are pros in small medical businesses. Let's think about a small medical business having 5 employees, and it's one of those 5 employees is responsible for this quality assurance stuff and documentation, so you can expect him to be a pro in this field. On the other hand, we have huge hospital companies where you can assume that the person that is doing this repetitive task for sure is not a pro in this field from the business perspective. So we figured out that there are those totally different groups, but there were so many, also the auditors. Then there are also some administrative things to do in this app. There were so many different groups that we decided to not use personas, but that we for each of the use cases, we at the start defined as some kind of user flow. We had a, how is it called in English? We selected from these different user groups the ones that were primarily using this use case. To be clear, when designing this use case, what is our focus group? What is our target group?
So instead of making personas, you kind of set boundaries for the different applications or approaches of different people.
Yeah. So personas are, in a lot of projects, personas are pretty useful. No question about that. And but if you have so many personas that that there is no clear separation between personas, but you have the one on the left hand and the one on the right hand, but you know there's every grayscale in the middle, and it doesn't make so much sense to have personas in the field.
So there is no basic A and B approach and method, as you said before, to a given project. And you also talked about having confidence or gaining confidence in the process in order to make informed decisions. This is something I think is absolutely key. And there is a question there that connects to that from Arun Kumar. He's a principal UX designer at Pipe Autodesk. And he writes, decision-making, this is what you've been talking about, the two worlds, and how do you decide in between decision-making and research, the research phase and the implementation phase and the handover phase is something that many designers actually struggle to go through. Can you tell us, how did you handle the situation?
So,
which I think relates to how do you talk with the client? I mean, there is something about getting a decision done based on an informed decision, but then also going to the next step, and in the final step going to
so there is some kind of process in making a decision. So we are now getting micro detail, but there is some kind of process how to make a decision. So usually we as a team try to make decisions together. So each one of us is making decisions in a totally natural habit. So I decide which shoes to take on in the morning and things like that. That is something I can do on my own. No problem with that. I do not need to call my colleagues. But when it comes to decisions that are not in your comfort zone, not in the field you feel confident with, or you are sure about, or you already gained information that you can say, this is the right decision, not because I am stating this, because I have arguments for this, then you can make this decision. Maybe it's a wrong decision. You will find out in the next test. That's no problem with that. But those critical decisions, those are decisions we discuss in a team, in our team, internally. Involving the client is the next level, the next step. But then you already made a decision in your team and you prepared your client to, or you prepared something the client can look at, and then you can explain the decision. So we try to not involve clients too much into this decision-making process, but we make sure as best as possible to have arguments for the decisions made, and then get into a discussion, into a informed discussion where you can change arguments, or you exchange arguments with the client, with the stakeholder, with whomever, doesn't matter. And maybe the person you are discussing with states you wrong, no problem about that. But you cannot make a decision upon nothing, upon a strong feeling that it should be like this is not working out.
Sounds challenging also, because if you really think you have the facts and you're making an informed suggestion to a client, and still they have a different opinion, or maybe different KPIs or different goals in the back of their heads, how do you go about this?
Yeah, they could not have different...
To get your convention and your design idea and your UX and architecture through.
Yeah, so you said they have different KPIs. That's not possible, because the KPIs are known. We did some requirements engineering. We know the KPIs. So, and for sure, we were talking a lot about the user perspective, but for sure, there is someone owning this product, and he is allowed to have some requirements to this product, maybe also requirements that are not in the sense of the user. That is the deal. I own the product, I provide the product to you as a user, and this product is not only meant to be good for you, but it's also meant to be good for me. That's the deal. So we usually know the KPIs. And yes, for sure, the client is allowed to be part of this design process. And he is not only allowed to, he is important in this process, and he's invited, or if he is not accepting this invitation, he is enforced to join the team that's responsible for this design process. Without the client, there is no progress. So if you involve the client into this process, he is also involved into decision-making, for example. And he is more or less at the pulse of what is going on. So my experience is that there usually is not so much discussion about this. There is sometimes discussion about resolving conflicts between the user need and the business need, and the user requirements and the business requirements, because this is sometimes pointing into different directions. And then it is one of the key tasks of UX design to make compromises and to tie those different needs together. And sometimes this is just not possible, but then you cannot build a product upon that. So failing in this process has to be accepted by everyone, by us, by the client. That's how it is. So if we start into a project, we usually start with the idea of, yeah, we can do this together, and sounds like a good idea, and let's try this out. But we cannot start into a project with some kind of guarantee of a result that is high quality and super smooth and pretty nice for everyone, that would not be a serious assumption.
So on the one hand, you do your homework. You really get to know the client's KPIs and goals and limitations, and then you take them on the road through an informed process. So in the best of cases, they really also change their minds on some steps because they see the evidence and they see the value of your approach, right?
Yes, and
to make it sound simple.
Yeah, and one thing you cannot expect from a product owner or from the business side is that they are able to change perspective. They usually are not. So they need help changing the perspective on the product from the business perspective to the user or consumer perspective. They need our help to get this, change of perspective done. Most of them, nearly everyone. So this is also one thing that we as a team can provide in this process, because we are not part of the business team. We are also not part of the users team. We are not part of any stakeholder. We are a team of people in the design team that are, I don't know the right word in English. Wir vermitteln. Can you help me out?
We moderate.
Yeah, we moderate this process between all those stakeholders and helping them to find good compromises or good solutions that fit all the needs of every stakeholder. To be honest, one more word to this. To be honest, I think it's in the nature of this design work that we tend to be on the user side.
But the client and the money comes from the other side. And there is actually the question whether you can go into somehow, or it says show, it's Amit Maitra from, she's a UX UI design manager at Cognizant. Can you show us the estimation process or describe how the timelines and budgets were fixed, which is probably at the beginning, of course, of the project?
Yeah, I will not answer this question for this project, but I can answer this question in general. So in general, we have the idea of to create a situation in which we can work together with the client. So we need to get to know each other. We need to talk about your project. We need to talk about your business goals. We need to talk about what do you expect from us? We need to talk about how do you think this should be done? And what do you think about the business value that's into this product or project? And tell me something about your assumptions about, or your hypothesis about why this product should be this way, and what do you want to achieve with this idea. And then we slowly figure out two major questions we then can answer. Do we want to join the team? And are we able to provide value in this team? So that's the two most important questions. And then it comes to how long will it last? How much time do I need to pay you? How big is the team? Things like that. So this is typical business development work. So we are able to make adjustments together with the client. So we can together decide what should be part of the project, what should be part of, let's say, this MVP, what should be part of this release, what should be part of our engagement. So we are able to make adjustments to handle different budget sizes. if you take a look at our website, we are working for small companies, we are working for global players. So for sure, they have different possibilities when it comes to spending money. No question about that. So those adjustments are important, but for sure, there are some limits. So if time and budget are so slow that we have the strong feeling we cannot create value with this, then it makes no sense to invest any second of time into this. And that's the basic idea. And on the other hand, there are two major models in which we are working. On the one hand, it's something like a design to budget or design to end date scenario, which is the most common one of those. But there are also scenarios in which we work for an unspecified amount of time for a client and a team, more or less constantly, as long as we are able to provide value. And then someday you figure out, okay, these problems that were the reason for our engagement are more or less gone. This fight is over. So there are solutions clarified that, I don't know, needs to be developed or something like this, but then this engagement usually also ends.
This sounds a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, that you try to get a feeling for your client before going into a client consultancy relationship, and you try to understand whether it's worth it. I don't know if that's overstating, but
it's correct.
I think you said something about also company culture and whether it really fits a user-centered approach, or whether a company or a client understands the value of good user-centered design, also in terms of employee benefits, also for themselves.
This is definitively something that is related to what I said before. We go into a project to create value. We do not go into a project to paint something or to bring some edgy, sexy color stuff into a, I don't know, already existing bad interaction design context. That's not what we are doing. And this means we only can help a client if the client has some kind of awareness for design being able to create value in his context. If it's just some I don't know, open position he needs to cover, or if it's just he needs someone that helps him out because his boss said this product is not sexy, then we are in trouble. So it's okay to have a statement like this. I do not enjoy this statement, but it's okay. And if we then together figure out that what he is meaning by the statement is that he needs help to understand how to create value in the design process, that I'm totally fine with this. But if it's just meant like, oh, come along, send me, I don't know, send me a designer for 2 weeks and his magical color palette and some Feenstaub he can put over the stuff, and then everything is fine. This is not how it is working. And in the end, that would mean the client gains no value from this process. So this is not to protect, this is not only to protect ourselves from stupid work, but it's also to protect the client from spending money with no result. It just makes no sense for both sides.
And I think that answers a bit Hamad Yahedi's question, because he wrote how to balance it as a trade-off. And I understand that this is not really a trade-off, because he says UXers need to consider business's point of view in order to provide sustainable user value. But as I take it, what you said, Martin, is also that businesses need to understand the UX point of view in order to create sustainable value.
Yes, for sure.
And I think that's a bit of a moralistic, or maybe let's say hopeful outlook, but let's not, why not end with a hopeful outlook? I think this is also something which I really like about what you said before, is also that designers and their consultancies and their work, they need to understand that they're bringing a value, they usually do, but how to approach and sell this value, how to understand the client, how to work together, I think is really how to show the value, and show and tell and not talk about it is also something that you said. So I think this is something that we can really take away from here. There is many other questions, but I think that time is already quite late, and in Europe it's early evening. In other parts of the world it's getting late, or you have to start working right now. So I would wrap it up for now, Martin. It's been wonderful and it's been really insightful. There was also a question about if there is a workshop where we can learn about all of this. So maybe this is something that if you already don't offer it yet, we should definitely talk about. We're happy to host anything if you come up with an idea, because I think this was really a deep dive into design methodology, but also strategy, how to be successful as a designer and a design consultancy. So thank you very, very much for all the information and the insights. I would be very happy to host you again and talk again. Thank you. Thank you for everybody who has been watching here on Zoom, taking part in person on LinkedIn Live. We would love to welcome you to one of our upcoming events. And actually the next one is already in 2 weeks on November 24th. It will be the New Talent Gold Award winner, Thomas Müller, who created a prototyping toolkit for tactile interactions. So it's actually about haptics, how to test haptics with very little effort. So check out the awards website for more and how to register. And also, of course, we will put up the documentation, the film of today's talk, so you can watch it again if you missed it. So have a lovely day, or a lovely morning, or a lovely evening, wherever you are. Martin, thank you very, very much again. Congratulations on this great work and the continuation. And we are looking forward to see the final product very, very soon.
Thanks a lot for the invitation. I enjoyed it a lot. And have a nice evening, morning, or whatever, everyone.
Likewise. Bye-bye. Thanks to all of you.